Minutes are attached. I entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. We're going to move the agenda around a little bit. So first item of business will be the US Cellular / T-Mobile agreement revisions.
As most of you probably know, in July, T-Mobile closed on the transaction to take over all of US Cellular's cellular service business. I wasn't even aware, though, that at the time that they are the largest tower construction and owner company in America. USA. They, on that piece of their business, is worth about $5.8 billion. And so we had to revise our agreements, and Mike's going to walk you through the basics. A lot of it's name changes from one name to the other. T-Mobile's taken over the responsibilities for the cellular equipment and service. And of course, it doesn't, I don't think, Mike, impact our US Cellular construction documents. But Mike, with that, why don't you give them an overview that's probably more accurate and clear than I can.
I think that you very much hit the main points. There are three separate pieces to our comprehensive agreement. One of which is construction of 3 towers, which were to be owned by US Cellular and will continue to be owned by US Cellular. And there's a time period they were required to keep them up and do maintenance on it. And that's tied into a second agreement we have where US Cellular is giving us spots on each of their towers for our new public safety system, new public safety radio system for free as part of that deal. So that will continue to be with US Cellular. But the third part of the deal is that we were going to provide a grant to US Cellular to put its cellular radio equipment onto the towers to provide cellular service. And in consideration of our providing them a grant of a defined size, and if there was any cost overrun, it was going to be all on them. They were going to keep those antennas up, do any replacement, maintenance, etc., for not less than 20 years. Well, as you just heard, US Cellular is getting out of the business. They're not going to be providing cellular telephone service and wireless radio service to the public anymore. They sold that whole line of business to T-Mobile. So what they came to us and proposed was that since T-Mobile was going to be taking over that line of business and taking over their service territory in Virginia, including Grayson County, that T-Mobile take on all those same obligations that they had previously had. So the agreement that you all have, there's a few bells and whistles to it because we had to disentangle a couple of things throughout the agreement, but the bottom line of what's happening is that T-Mobile is taking over that last part, the provision of the cell service throughout the county for 30 years or for 20 years, in consideration of our making of the grant.
I would add that we've already had some interaction with T-Mobile engineers because US Cellular did all the initial engineering for the towers and the equipment, and T-Mobile over the past 6 weeks has jumped in. And if I didn't know one was with one was the other, it would make a bit of difference. They've been very responsive and stepped up to evaluate things as part of this. So I feel pretty comfortable with it.
So they're not asking for any changes or anything?
It's basically changing names.
Yeah.
And Mike, isn't US Cellular going to be known as Array Technologies?
Yeah, and they changed the name of all of their sub-entities to fall under that name since calling themselves cellular doesn't make any sense anymore because they're not providing cellular service. They're providing the power to cellular service providers, put their stuff on.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, we do have a resolution that would need to be passed, approving the changes and reassignment of the cellular equipment and services to T-Mobile, for
Do
consideration.
we just have to pass the resolution, or do we have to pass the sign agreement as well?
Mike, technically, pass the resolution, or do they have to also act on the agreement itself?
Passing the resolution approves the agreement and authorizes the chairman or vice chairman to sign and have it delivered to the company.
Okay.
Once we've filled in, the final couple of things like the date, stuff like that.
Okay.
That's all that's left to be filled in.
Anybody got any questions about the resolution?
Just pretty much it's the name changes.
Yeah, and Mike has been working on it for several weeks, and I've been involved in that and have read it thoroughly, and, I have no problems with the changes.
Entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Say,
Motion and second, roll call, Mr. Clement.
Aye.
Thompson.
Aye.
I'm also aye. Is, Mike on Zoom?
I'm on a telephone, but I'm through the Zoom, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I was talking about Mike Hack.
Supervisor Hatch.
No.
He's not, okay, all right.
Okay.
So we have the passing of the resolution with 3 yeas.
We do.
All right, next, we're gonna move to cell tower construction update. Thank you, Mr. Lockerbie.
Mike, thank
All right,
you.
Thank you for letting me call in.
Okay, now, we didn't pass it 15-minute time, so I don't expect to get billed for this, right?
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Man, you can pinch your penny, Tom.
Yeah.
Take care.
Do my best. Okay, if you look at this table that's in front of you, the only comment I'll make other than just reading a few dates to give you the timeline is I never understood how long it takes to get federal approval if you're a U.S. government licensed company. So far, Quillen's Ridge is going to be the first one up to bat. It took 12.5 months to get all the regulations passed, and we even had to get a homeowner to cut 2 trees down because Fish and Wildlife Service said the bats may be in them at some point, and they wouldn't let them cut the trees. So I asked the question, does that apply to a homeowner? They said no. Well, that homeowner decided he needed firewood. So we need to give him a resolution of
They carry
thanks.
rabies.
It's crazy. But anyway,
There's other trees there for them also.
yeah. If you look at this tonight at the public hearing, the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve the Whitetop Tower site. If that is done, then we will be able to start construction on December the 8th. The Quillen's Ridge Tower should start before Thanksgiving on 11/17. And it's projected now that Walnut Knob, which has not finished all the permitting yet, will start March 23rd. Now you'll notice that it takes about 3 months from building permit issued to having a tower ready to put equipment.
Walnut Knob is Thieves Ridge.
Yes.
Okay.
It's interesting because USA kept using Thieves Ridge because they didn't know about it. They didn't want to change names in all the systems, but it is Walnut Knob. And if you don't know where that's at, it's west of Thieves Ridge. And the interesting thing about that is I can stand at this site and see the towers on York Ridge. And it's a perfect line of sight back into Whitetop where they will put the tower. So we're getting less interference, and it's an easy construction process. We've been real lucky in all 3 sites to hopefully we're going to come in under budget on construction because access roads are minimal. But that's where we are now. I'll get into a little more detail a little bit later when we talk about the Whitetop Tower. But depending on your decision tonight on that, public hearing, and afterwards, hopefully we'll be able to start construction right after 1st of December. Any questions?
Yeah, so, we've got 3 different completion dates, starting at the end of February and end of March. Will those towers go live then, or will they all go at the same time?
Oh, no, they'll go live as soon as they go live.
Okay, so the cellular and internet,
Yes,
5G.
wireless internet and so.
So do we have a plan in place to try to let citizens know that you're gonna be able to get internet starting this date?
We do.
What's that?
Publish it on all the web pages, like in Whitetop, there's a Friends of Whitetop, there's a website from the community center that's well visited and participated in. We'll be using, I don't know if y'all are familiar with Gary Rasco's newsletter, which is now going to 1,600 homes between Malva, Wilson, and Whitetop. It's in that we've been doing quarterly updates in that for the past year, and that'll be used.
And I know most people are familiar already, but
Yeah, but it's gonna be important to get the word out. And T-Mobile has said they'll come in and help us put together a complete map marking program. Any other questions?
Okay, moving on, project budget performance.
Yes, this is really an update to let you see where we stand. And you, just to refresh your memory, when we received the tax exempt money, it was made very clear that that money could only be spent for the purchase of 911 equipment and for the grant for the cellular equipment. It could not be spent for tower construction. And so we have to track all 3 of those buckets very closely, because at the end of the project, the feds will come in and audit us on that. And following Nikki's guidance, Nikki Edwards, we've already structured all the accounts and we're tracking it closely. We are currently doing a reconciliation of the 911 stabilization project, because we found that in the accounting system there from 2003 and 4, there was some expenses that appeared to go from broadband into that or vice versa. So we're putting all that back together and should have that completed in about a week. And we'll share that with you once it comes out, because that's just part of the overall audit process for the project as a whole. But thus far, all of the 911 equipment has been purchased and it is deployed, except the equipment that will go on the new towers. And we do have a withhold of about $377,000, $378,000 that we hold on to until they put the last pieces of equipment up and we do all the engineering testing. So we're kind of in a holding pattern, waiting on these other towers to make this happen. We're already seeing great benefits of the 911 equipment. And, you know, as I tell people, to me, probably the single most important thing is the redundancy capability of this, so that if one tower goes down, we got microwave shots that will keep all the system up. And not only that, but any of you who've worked as volunteers know in the old radio system, when you went from one zone to another, guess what? You had to change your channel. With our new system, you can drive from Galax to Whitetop to Washington County, and you never change a channel. The system does all of the interchanges for the volunteers, which will be a great thing, improving communication. So I just wanted you to know, obviously haven't spent any money except $1,800 in the grant fund, and we've only spent $6,300 for tower construction. And last but not least, the Tobacco Commission recently, at Steve's request, gave us permission on that $300,000. We can spend it on anything regarding towers. Before it was equipment, where we didn't really need it with this agreement. So they have agreed to let us spend it on towers too. So that's a good thing for us.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions?
I might have missed this, but what was the 6,300 for the construction? What's that been?
It was a preliminary permit. I think that one was with the Fish and Wildlife Service, because we're trying to get ahead of the game with them on everything.
Gotcha.
12 to 13 months. And thank God they didn't find any artifacts when they dug a few holes for Indians, because if you do that, you have to do an archaeological dig.
That's what happened down here.
Uh-huh.
Right across from the falls here.
Yeah. So anyway, that it was for an early permit.
Okay,
To get
thank you.
registered. Okay.
Moving on, Whitetop Tower planning.
Bring your attention to the handout, which is the only thing here. The picture that you see is the actual tower. The engineers took a picture of the topography and the ridge it's going to sit on, and they put the tower in place. So that's what our tower in Whitetop will look like. It'll be a lattice metal frame. It'll be 225 feet tall with a 4-foot lightning rod. The base will be 20 feet triangular sides. It'll have a concrete foundation that'll be subterranean, so you won't see a concrete base. The only things on the ground will be a small building, an electric generator. The way these towers are engineered now, they don't have to actually encompass with fencing the full 100 by 100 square parcel. They do 60 by 60 because that tower is made that if it starts to fall, it breaks in 4 pieces. And the engineers who design it certify and are bonded to say that if it breaks and it falls outside the 60-foot fence, they're totally responsible for liability. So it's fascinating. I didn't believe it until they showed me a movie picture of one of them that they use. There will be a gravel access road. It will not be paved. Because it is on Old Park Road and not 58, VDOT was very kind and generous with the way we have to structure the entrance and exit. That's not a major issue. So that's the tower that we're proposing. US Cellular picked a location based on their engineering drawings and their engineering assessments. And when you look at the second page, you'll see 2 yellow, they look like hearts, but kind of out of shape. The one that has the blue line is the one that the engineers suggested or recommend. The other one is actually on a piece of property owned by Fire and Rescue. And late in the game, Fire and Rescue came to us and said, we think you ought to put it on our property so we can get the money. So T-Mobile said, okay, we'll throw our resources in the pot because US Cellular was tied up. And they did another assessment of that site. And they came back to us, and if you turn to the next page, this is the comparison. The coverage from the Greer property, which is what had been recommended, is about 99.3%. It's about as perfect as you'll ever get. If we were to move the tower, it would only get 93% coverage, so we lose about 6.8% of coverage. If you look at the Creeper Trail with the Greer property, the head of the Creeper Trail will get about 61% coverage. And with the Fire and Rescue property, it's 50%. The tower height for Greer is 225. The tower height on Fire and Rescue would have to be 265. Construction cost, as you can see, $354 versus $503. And the estimate of $503 is based on the fact that you have to go completely to forested land, do land clearing, and believe it or not, the VDOT requirement for access off 58 is about $75,000. Whereas at Park Road, it's $1,900. The big thing for me, in addition to the cost, is if we were to move the tower, we get less coverage, higher tower, and a much higher cost. And it would delay our project 12 to 15 months because no permitting has been done on that property. So the Planning Commission is going to be recommending to you the Greer property, and our staff, after going through this, recommends the Greer property as well. I will tell you that I've taken a lot of grief in Whitetop, but every time I get in front of one of them and say, explain it to me. Taller tower, you're moaning and groaning because you don't want to see a tower, so you're going to put a taller one up. We're going to lose 7%. And one person told me, well, that's only 7. That's not much. And I said, what if it's your mother is one of the 7%? How do you feel about that? Well, I don't care. You're going to cost the county more money, and we get less coverage. I hadn't had anybody explain to me how that makes a lot of sense. And the irony is, there's gonna be a tower somewhere. It's not like we can move it to North Carolina or hide it or do whatever with it. And as I've tried to be a champion in the community is, okay, I don't like towers either. But I like less the fact that I might call to have my wife's emergency taken care of and nobody responds. That's unacceptable. And to me, that's a compelling reason to move forward with real property, frankly. So anyway, that's what, we wanted to do that presentation here instead of trying to do something at your board meeting. Because I thought you might have more questions or whatever at this point in time. So I'm open for questions.
Is that at their fire and rescue? How do they have a property? Is that-
They own property across the road.
So it's across the road from
It
them?
is across the road. And the other thing, Member Tomlinson, you can't put a tower within 500 feet of any building.
What is it?
Right. And they initially wanted to put it on their property where the fire department is. But there's no way to
Right,
pass
there's
any
no-
kind of standard for that. They also recommended we put it at the community center, but then there's a helipad going in and the FAA said, no. You can't put a tower in the potential flight path. So we did do a thorough study on both sites, the one recommended by US Cellular and the one that a group of citizens suggested. Because we wanted to hear them out. And we even extended the review process 30 days to give us more time with T-Mobile to do it. Other questions?
What is the monetary advantage to the fire and rescue? Should they have a tower
About $9,000 a year.
a year?
I mean, I hypothetically, I proposed to them, I said, okay, so the county does this. Why don't you give all the money to the county until you pay it back? And then I told the person who
I
was
bet
the
they like
champion, I
that,
said,
Tom.
you're gonna be dead before you pay them back. So you're not gonna see any money. I guess I've always just taken a really hard turn on, they think the county has a pot of money that's bottomless. Honestly, they do. And I always tell them, if you want the county to do it, go down there and recommend they raise taxes. And if I lived in the eastern part of the county, I'd say raise them on the western end, not my end. So I am sensitive to their concern. Nobody likes a tower, but this tower is engineered to use have the smallest footprint, the least amount of metal and bulk in the tower. There are no guide wires. There's nothing like that. And I think this is probably the best we can do and get the service we need for the citizens of our community.
On the other two sites, is there any drama with that? Is this really the only hang up we have on all three sites?
Yeah, the other sites have gone very smoothly. So,
Knock on wood.
Yeah, I know.
but they're all under contract. Those two are totally under contract. And the irony is Greer will be under tomorrow if the board approves everything tonight to say move forward. US Cellular will go ahead and nail it down.
Well, before I ever came on this board, I was going to meetings in the west end of the county about, we've got to do something about communication. We've got to do, and Supervisor Clement and I were talking the other day. Let's get this done. We don't need any more hang-ups.
December.
It doesn't matter what we do, it's gonna make somebody mad. Let's get it done and get the tower done.
This has been the number one, since I've been on the board, I think the number one issue, one of my number one issues too, because the radio system is terrible, has been terrible, and it's dangerous. And there's been a lot of concerns from the western end of the county, and I understand, I wholeheartedly agree, but sometimes you gotta fix it. We can't spend millions of dollars and not do the best we can for the system, is my take on it. Even if it's 7% or 10%, whatever, it's not acceptable to take less.
Well, and all the towers, it was really funny. Initially the community thought I was the one who decided where the towers go. And I told them in a public meeting, I said, y'all must think I'm really stupid. Because if that was the case, they'd all three be on my
On your
farm.
land.
I'd be raking in the dough, buddy.
Mm.
And I tried to explain that this is not just throw a dart and put a tower. I mean, the engineering behind where they go. I mean, they can tell you if they move a tower 300 feet, they can then look at the propagation map and tell you the people that are probably going to lose coverage by that single move.
And it's that finicky.
Well, it is,
It's
and
that finicky.
And the other thing is, I didn't realize this, but when you shoot that microwave, there are things in the ground that create static.
Resistance.
And so when they evaluate a shot, they're looking at not only can they see it, but they're looking at all the radioactive interference that can occur. And this is the best site. And T-Mobile agreed, and US Cellular both agreed. So and I think it's good.
I would just add to what both of them already said, that, you know, we're looking at a construction date of December 8th, and you
Yes.
basically just told us it'd be 12 to 15 or 12 to 16
12 to
months.
15 months.
So nobody wants that. And 75,000 for the road construction versus 1,900, that's incredible.
Well, you got a taller tower, it's gonna cost more, your foundation's gonna have to be bigger, which costs more, and access is I never realized what it costs to put a driveway on 58 in today's world. Or maybe 30 years ago, you just go out there and do it, and they never say anything, but you don't do it now.
I would love to give it to the fire and rescue, but it just doesn't look like the most logical thing.
Well, y'all been more generous with fire and rescue as a board in the last couple of years. I pulled that for one of our meetings to see what the county had put into the fire and rescue people, into the organization. You put a fair amount of money there, in all of them, in particular Whitetop.
Any more questions on that? Wired road asset disposition?
Mr. Boyer.
I don't know if we're still working through, the wired road agreements. We are in the process of finalizing the agreement with a new vendor, so we will be done with wired road assets. It'll be up to the county to decide what they want to do with the current assets that are in the county. We have a tower at Grant Grange, and so Tom and I are working through that. Was that last couple of weeks, I guess. And so, yeah, I would think by the next board supervisor meeting, I'll have an announcement as to who's taking over wired road assets, or the fiber, at least the fiber for wired road. That's really it. Anything else you want to add to that?
The wired road hasn't had enough customers to really generate revenue to keep their equipment up. I'm surprised a lot of it works. It's so old.
Oh,
So the fiber is the important piece of work they have.
that's what the board purchased. Yeah. Everything else, they're going to leave to the respective counties and the city. Respective counties. Carroll's going to put their assets with ours. We just have to decide if we need them or not.
Do they still have the, on Fort Lookout Tower, they have customers, Margaret?
Got about 160 total customers.
Okay. Cox Grant?
Yes, sir. As you know, Carroll County, Galax, and Grayson received a cooperative grant from the feds valued at $3 million. It was to be used to create interoperability between the three communities. And right now, there has been about $2.5 million of purchases made. Things like new dispatch equipment, new recorders for those systems, new microwave transmission equipment, new radios, a whole host of things. We received about $450,000 of purchases that will be deployed only in our county. Carroll received about $600,000. City of Galax got about $295,000. And we're working now to beginning the audit process because the grant closes in March of 26. And so we're finishing up all the federal reporting and doing the audits. And I've been working with them from our county's perspective, as Nikki and Shane. So it's going great, and we're getting some things that we would not have had otherwise. And I think the single most important thing is having the new dispatch equipment, because the dispatch center is going to be totally state of the art and totally renovated place. And we all benefit from that, all three groups. So that seems to be moving along.
Is the site going to stay together with the police department?
As far as I know, unless,
For now,
there's not a lot of room there.
That's always, I've heard that for years.
So
All right, Point Lookout HOA discussion.
Mr. Bory and I have had some interesting conversations with them. As you know, we bought the property the tower sits on, and some members of their board think that we have no right to have a tower there at all. We've had our attorneys look at it very closely, and honestly, the only thing that could possibly fall outside of our current agreement with the easement on that property is allowing internet providers to be on it, because they're not county entities. It says county entities. So there's a meeting coming up on October the 18th at the Gate Center. And I'll be leading a presentation about the future of 911 and the importance of the Point Lookout Tower in that process. Honestly, if they were to really hold our feet to the fire, our lawyers say they could probably force us to take the internet providers off. And that means about 320 families would lose internet. Mr. Boyer did a great job of trying to explain to them, on a community-wide basis, that 2 discs this big on a tower does not create an eyesore. But honestly, some of their board members basically said, we don't care. We want them all. So if they were to do that, our position would be to ask for a 12-month period so that we can try to develop an alternative approach to serving those people. The tower that we will be taking down off of Point Lookout, the reason that tower was condemned had nothing to do with the structure. It was all the foundation. The foundation started delaminating and the tower could pull out and fall.
Mhm.
And it's not designed to fall in one piece or in 3 pieces. So one of the things that we've started looking at is, okay, if we had to take the internet providers off, if we had 12 months, could we take that tower and redeploy it? And so we're literally looking at where and how and what would it cost to do that. Because you and I both know if 300 families lose internet, it's going to be terrible. But hopefully, I'm hopeful that the members of that homeowners association, at least the majority, will look favorably upon us keeping the internet providers on there, because they're not going to add any more equipment, and let us just keep moving forward with what we got. But we'll know more after the 18th of October.
That meeting specifically for the HOA to come.
Yes. And it's going to be a full membership meeting. It's not just a board. So I think Shane Prescott and I are going to be there to do the presentation, and we'll do our best to convince
Any questions? All right, anything else, Mr. Board?
there's something else I'll look at, I'm thinking of. There's something else we're missing, I just can't think of it.
Go ahead.
By the way, just
Oh.
to keep this short. Sweet.
Yeah, if you do talk to Kelly, he obviously is excited. The school's been really thankful for the progress that has been made towards communication. School bus drivers are excited the fact that they can talk to each other now. There's obviously some still challenges on the west end, but Kelly called me from Sparta saying, "Hey, I'm talking to my people on the radio right now," you know, and so of course he called Channel 10 News, and we went and did a little story at Channel 10 News. So, we are seeing progress on this. It's obviously, as Mr. Ivy noted, in the beginning, the land leases were going to be the biggest challenge, and that has been some of the biggest. Well, permitting and land leases have been the biggest challenge towards getting these towers up. But we're moving forward. We just got pushing in the right direction. That's all I got.
Yeah, I have one more question. It's a little off topic. Have you heard anything on the BEAD funding?
Yes, BEAD funding, the different vendors could go out and they heard back August 15th, I believe, on who was awarded money. Not nearly as much money as everybody was expecting. So it's a drop in the bucket. Believe it or not, Gigabeam got a little bit of money for our county.
Zytel for Carol.
Zytel got Carroll. And I have to tell you that the newspaper article that swore that everybody in Carroll County within 2 years is going to have internet, and I've had more people in this county call me just giving me grief. And I told one guy who called me 5 times, and I said, "Look, let's put a wager on this. I'll bet you $100 in 3 years there's not everybody has internet in Carroll County because they're just like us. They're a tough, scattered terrain, lousy place to try to do internet." And he just said, "Well, I just wish I had it." And so I said, "Well, we'll see what we can do about that as soon as these other towers are up, because I think you can get it once we get the 3 towers up."
Starlink.
You know, that was
The crazy thing is, if you could get Gigabeam, it's really good service.
It is very good.
And it's $50 cheaper than, and I'm a huge fan of Starlink.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have cheaper, but
Yeah, you gotta get what you can get.
it's good.
Yeah, it is good. I agree.
Well,
You can get anything.
we actually did a little bit of assessment through Shane with a couple of engineers about what would it have been like if we'd used Starlink instead of the deployment we're going through now. And Starlink came back and said, we can't handle the liability associated with radio communication for life and death situations and law enforcement. And their technology doesn't allow for the duplication and redundancy elements. They don't have, only the military. They offer some redundancy capabilities for military, but nobody but the military can get their hands on it. So. But it is a good alternative for people who, and there will be a handful of people that will never reach with any of the systems we're putting in place.
Grayson County, no matter what we're going to do, some people's going to have satellite.
That's true. But hopefully very few will be forced to do that. Okay.
That's it, sir.
So thank you.
Mr. Rebels, thank you for everything, Mr. Board. All right.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
They told me not to come back.